everyone, I'm Barbara from Fairies in My Pond, and today is Tuesday and I will be answering one of your questions. One of the most frequent questions I get is about Moonies, white marks throughout your clay. Now I made this up with translucent now that we know clay. What Moonies are, I'm going to share with you, really it was a journey for me to figure out what it was that I was doing with polymer clay to create Moonies, but I also found out too it wasn't necessarily me. It had to do with other circumstances, and I'm going to share this with you. Now then, before I do get started, I do want to mention this. This discovery only has to do with me. This might not apply to all information, and take what little bit that you can, apply it to something that you're doing, and if it doesn't work, it'll lead you into another thought to try something else with it. Today I'll be showing you how I went through it. You'll see how I had one idea and it led into another and another and another. I have a very, very old doll here, and I keep this to show all of my students. This was way back when I was really starting, and all I did was I made a wire armature. I did not even cover the wire. This was not a good thing for me, and I did not even stick with it for very long. I figured out the problem, but I'm going to share with you on this, and we're going to see if we can get to the bottom of it for you. Okay, first of all, the armature I found was the starting point. Most people I found, when they would share their information, they used aluminum foil like this, and they would tape it up, used floral tape, masking tape, medical tape, insulation tape, whatever it is that they could find that polymer clay would be compatible with. I tried the aluminum foil. That's why you see no core inside, because this did not work for me. I'm going to explain to you why this didn't work, but it does work for a lot of other people. When I take the aluminum foil, you scrunch it all up. I've got all these little dips into the foil. I take masking tape and I go around it. Now, some people will put raw polymer clay right over the aluminum foil. That just did not work for me. I wanted to tape it up. When you tape it up with masking tape, there's one thing that I would suggest: be very careful with the masking tape that you're using, because I found out there are different, and the other one waxy. The waxy is the one that you do want to use. The one with the paper, the real cheap one, what it does, it will absorb your oils, and when you go and you work on it, let's say you sculpt it, you set it down a couple of hours, what it's doing is that masking tape is absorbing that oil just as it is touching that raw clay. So by the time you get that in the oven, that can really cause you a lot of cracks in your clay. Not so much Moonies, I didn't find that, but I found that really led into cracking. Okay, now the waxy masking tape, that one there didn't absorb. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. When I take my clay, and I condition my clay. Now you'll hear out there with information that they might just slice it off the block and they don't even condition it and it works out fine. You will have to experiment with that for yourself. But I do condition my clay. Now then, how do you know that your clay is conditioned? Well, your edges, for one, will not be all crumbly looking. It'll be nice and smooth. Now what I do is I like to take a piece, kind of large enough, like I would do this a little bit larger, but I'm just going to show you a starting point. I don't want my clay to be too thick, but I don't want my clay to be too thin. Now I would take my clay, place it over your core, and what I do is I'll take my thumb and I will always press down in the center of that polymer clay. Then what I do is I will take the clay and I work from the center out, pressing, not so much stretching the clay, pressing it. And I will press it all the way out to the edges of that polymer clay. Now here's what I'm going to show you what was my problem. Because of the dips in my aluminum foil, and even if I taped it up a whole many times and made it as smooth as I could, I still had dips. When I have a dip in it, and I don't know if you can see it here, but I have one right here. What happens is that I create an air pocket. I will take another piece of clay. Now this is only me. This is what I created. I would take another piece of polymer clay and I would lay it over it. And if you think about it, when you lay it over it, even though I do press down on it, I still am not pressing, or the clay just is not getting down into that clay to where it has a flush, hard surface to push that air out. I leave a little bit of air in it. So that is what I discovered with aluminum foil. Now let me take this off and we're done with this. Next information that I found was to take scrap polymer clay and to use it for a core with your for your armature. I ran into some serious problems with this. Now I do know many artists do it this way, and it works very well for them. It didn't for me, and I'm going to share with you why it didn't. This piece here that I'm using as for a demonstration, we're going to say that this is the core. Now this is all cooked and everything. I would take my polymer clay, flatten it out, and I would apply it the same way that I showed you with the head. I take my clay and I would push down in the center and work it out to the edges of that clay. Now what I found is that sometimes when I would apply it, the polymer clay would start sticking. But the more I worked with it, what happened is that the clay started to raise up away from the cooked polymer clay, and it was creating an air pocket because I could see it raising up, and then I would go in there and I would push it, and all I was doing was taking that pocket and I kept moving it around on that polymer clay, and all I was doing was making it bigger or just moving it to another area. I found this to be very much of a problem around the ankles, around the wrist, or even in the torso, right in here. So I would take the clay, and once that's all pressed down, Then you're going to go in there and I'm going to manipulate my clay. So basically, I'm going to drag it. But as I'm dragging it, I'm also going back and I'm pressing down. Now, I did do this. I thought, well, maybe if I take some liquid Sculpting and just coat that a little bit. What that did for me was it made my clay like mush. And it made it so that it got so dirty. It was a total disaster for me. So basically, I would do that. And it will, I've got one going right there. I don't know if you're going to see it. I've got more. I've got one right here. One right there. And I've got one that's starting right in there. Now, when you do have an air pocket, you can go in there and you can slice it. And then you can work it out. So if you ever do see one here, I've got one right here too. But you'll see it. It'll look like a real thin piece of almost like a translucent look to it. Now, the one thing that I do want to explain here is that you might wonder, well, if I cook a doll, and let's say I needed to add a little bit of some polymer clay to build up an area to where I actually missed it. I honestly don't have a problem with doing it like that. I had the problem with the whole armature. Small areas I was all right, but to be working with a solid piece like this, I created many air pockets. Okay, so let's get that out of the way. Now this led me into, it was another product, and it is another expense to add to your materials with polymer clay. But I was able to keep on sculpting, and that is my two-part epoxy sculpt that I use. Now, I'm not here to sponsor them. They don't even know who I am. But I have to say, this was the best stuff that ever happened to me. This was the beginning of my stage to finding out how to eliminate Moonies. I have a little small piece of the two-part epoxy sculpt, and this is already cured and everything, but I don't want to get into it and make a piece to present this because it is like gold to me. It really is. So I have this little piece, and what happened to this little piece? This is actually a little tool that I use with my clay sometimes of getting into an area and smoothing it. So that's another thing that I would suggest. If I ever have little pieces left over, I make tools. Okay, now I'm going to show you just a little example. And really this piece isn't big enough. But when I place my polymer clay over the two-part epoxy, it gives me such a firm base. I don't have any dips in it. You can smooth it out, the core, very nicely. It's like, it can be like glass, and it is very strong. I mean, it just adheres to it so well. And I mean, I can really drag my clay. I won't even create a trapped air. Now that piece was too thin there. See, now that's what I was saying. You don't want to apply your clay too thin, and you don't want to do it too thick. because it'll just make you have to go back in there and add clay to it. But that's kind of like a trial and error. You'll just experiment with yourself, and you'll know when you're comfortable with the thickness of clay that you want to apply. You might apply it a lot thicker than I do, or thinner, I don't know. But thinner, just be careful, because you don't want to create air pockets with putting all these little pieces of real thin polymer clay. You don't want that. Okay, now let's put this aside. This next one took me a little while to figure it out, but I live in an area that we have a lot of humidity and we do have dampness. I also live out in the country, so I have a lot more of this than what other people may have. Now, this just never clicked in with me that a climate would have anything to do with it. My thinking just was not going in that direction. I kept thinking it was me that was making the problem, when I found out that the next problem was the climate that we live in. Polymer clay, I found, does not like moisture whatsoever or dampness. I had to invest in a dehumidifier, and I put it in my studio, and I had no problems with it whatsoever. Even with the air conditioning running, I still needed the dehumidifier. So pay attention to where you're sculpting. I have a lot of people that will email me, and the first thing I'll say is, where are you sculpting? Many will say in their basements. We don't have basements here, but there's just certain areas that you might be in that you're around dampness or humidity. So pay attention to that. That was huge. Okay, now let's get on to the next. I have in front of me a pan of baking soda. Now, this puzzle piece right here, I did not find it anywhere. I did this by just a thought came to me. What if I put polymer clay in my oven? Will it absorb, baking soda in my oven, will it absorb the fumes? I put it in my oven, and I made a total mess out of it because I have a convection oven and it blows air, so it was everywhere. Okay, I don't know. Something just told me, take a doll, and I did. Let me take this raw clay off. Okay, I took my doll, but you'd have it facing up. Okay, I take it like this, lay it in there nicely, don't press down. I take my baking soda and I will lightly cover the whole doll. I would take the pan and I would put it in my oven. I took some aluminum foil and I covered it. What I found when I covered it, I had to pay attention to the temperature, because when I cover something, for some reason, it takes it longer to reach that temperature inside that cover than if I have it open like this. Now, I do not recommend this, but I'm going to share with you what I do. I have several ovens because I give many classes. Now, I have one oven that is strictly for this, and I don't even cover it anymore. My oven is a total mess. I have to go in there from time to time and clean it. Now, is that really healthy for my oven as far as how long it's going to work for me? I don't know. I pick up my ovens all at yard sales, so I don't pay that much for them. They're just really easy for me to find. Whenever I'm out there, if I find one, whether I need it or not, I pick it up. But I've been doing the baking soda, and I was trying to figure it out, and I'm right on the time, but I'm not sure. It's been at least over 10 years that I've been doing this, and my oven is still working the same. I use it in classes, so my oven is getting a lot of use, and it is still working beautifully. Now, in my next tutorial, I want to also share with you with this. I am going to go more into with the baking soda and the baking part of it. Okay, now I would slip this in the oven, cook it. I would take the dough, pull it straight out while it's hot. Now, some people will, I've read now that they say that they didn't like the baking soda because it made an imprint of the baking soda. I make dolls, and I want my dolls to be really smooth, and the only thing that I can say is that the baking soda that's on it right now, I can feel the gritty, but as I wipe it off, it is just as smooth as can be. I have never experienced it to where it made any imprints in the clay, and I've got a lot of air going on. But I had a thought with that, and I don't know if this is really true, is that when some people are experiencing that, I was wondering, is their oven, the oven space, lower? Because I have a very tall oven. I could put a very large doll in there. And I was wondering that if you have that blower closer to your doll, if that wouldn't be why some people would get an imprint from that baking soda. So I wanted to throw that out at you, but I really can't tell because I don't use that kind of an oven to where it's the blower is closer. It is really a tall oven. Okay, here I want to share with you some pieces that I really went to the extreme of testing this. This one here, now this was all one piece, and what I did was I just cut it in half. And I put this through my pasta machine at the thinnest setting because the thinnest with translucent really makes Moonies. So I went to the extreme. Now this one here that I have all these little marks on it is showing me that there are Moonies starting. And this was cooked without baking soda. This one here was cooked with baking soda, and that right there says dirt, so I had to write that so I knew what it was. But I have no Moonies. This one here is a thicker piece of translucent clay, and it was cooked in baking soda. No Moonies. I took some more and I added a little bit of some flesh colored clay, polymer clay, and I cooked it with baking soda. No Moonies. Now, is this the solution to Moonies? No, I would never put that out to any of you because I believe we still can have Moonies. But I can say this, by sharing with you this journey of mine, I have really eliminated Moonies. I haven't had a Moonie in years, and I'm really, really grateful that I don't, because that is the worst thing an artist hates to see, is when they spend all the time on a piece and they get a Moonie. Now, some of you might ask, well, I have one little mark. Can I repair it? Yes, you can. If it is to the point to where it can be repairable, you just take a little X-Acto knife. You can actually pop them out. Sometimes they'll go really, really deep and you just can't get it out. But usually they're right on top and you will just pop it out like this. Fill it in with your clay. If you have a whole bunch of them, I don't know. If you want to give it a try, go ahead. I mean, it's going to either be scrapped or you're going to be able to correct it. But I look at it this way. Let's try to avoid the Moonies so that we don't have to do things like this. Okay, everyone. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do, because it doesn't cost you anything here on YouTube to subscribe. If you would like to join my Facebook page, I share pictures, information on there. I'll leave the link below with my blog also. Ask questions, interact, show me what it is that you're doing. I would love that. If any of you have a question here, feel free to leave it below in the comment. I will add it to my list if I haven't already made a video. So next week I will see you with more details on baking soda and how I bake it. I'll see you in my next video.